So welcome to the side event of the International Data Alliance for Children on the Move. We are here at IDAC UNICEF building, and we thank all the member states, international organizations, other partners of the Alliance that are joining us online. The weather is inclement today, so to see a considerable number of in-person participants is very heartwarming and encouraging. I'm Australia. I coordinate the International Data Alliance, and we're here with an impressive list of panelists today. Thank you for being with us. Without further ado, I'd like to call on our Director of Data and Analytics Planning and Monitoring for UNICEF, Ms. Vidya Ganesh.
Thank you, Strela. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to all of you who are here, and also all our 60 online participants and colleagues, and especially to all our partners, and also to all our technical panelists. You know, this is our third year since IDAC was set up with its very noble, difficult, and an important task. So we're all really here gathered to once again to reaffirm, and I think that reaffirmation is very critical as we come out of the COVID and we start to kind of understand the impact of COVID a little bit more than we could while we were in the midst of the COVID, to really protect the children on the move. This group doesn't need to know what the definition is, but still, I think it's important to remind ourselves that this is not some big group of children, but these are children who are migrants, refugees, stateless, and internally displaced. And of late, we have put a lot more emphasis on stateless so that they get incorporated into a holistic understanding of the situation around the children on the move. And we also know that these are amongst the most vulnerable on the planet. And to be protected, they have to be visible, and to be visible, they have to be counted. Hence our theme today, better data and social statistics to ensure the inclusion and protection of children on the move. But I would also like us to recall our efforts to uphold the rights of this marginalized group was really formalized at the 50th session of the United Nations Statistical Commission in 2020. It may feel a long time ago, but it was not that long time ago. But the events have overtaken us. When since then where we launched this International Data Alliance for Children on the Move. The operative here is Alliance, and that's really why we are here today. And it's such a pleasure to see all of you reaffirming our commitment to that approach of working in an alliance. This unique alliance brings together all our member states, and there are many here today. I've had the pleasure to meet colleagues from Morocco, Egypt, and Philippines, and Sweden, and Greece, and all the other UN agencies, international and regional organizations, NGOs, academics, and stakeholders that really recognize that the children on the move must be prioritized in data collection efforts, and their needs can only be better met if that data is available for policies and renewed investments. Not that investments are not happening and not that policies are not in place, but there is still a bit of a mismatch in terms of who, where, how, and we can do a lot better to make our policies and investments in this resource scarce setting that we are facing to be more effective. Sadly, we are witnessing a world under the threat. We are starting to use the word folly crisis now to really emphasize the fact that there have not been many occasions in the past where we have had such multiple crises happening simultaneously, which are happening independent of secular threats, and the global pandemic in its fourth year, the climate change conflict, that are all affecting us simultaneously. And in 2022, we started to hear this really very big numbers and worrying numbers, of displaced persons, which has crossed the 100 million mark, and the drought that is estimated to displace 700 million by 2030, and more desperate crossings are due to the economic, political, and personal insecurity. But what is also challenging and alarming that the children will be the disproportionate number of those who are forced to leave home due to dangerous circumstances that are no longer bearable. And the proportion of the unaccompanied children in that is also likely to increase. So we kind of know what's coming ahead of us. So it is possible to therefore be better prepared. So now more than ever before, the international community must unite and work together to protect the rights of these children, ensuring that they're seen and encountered. The alliance is supported by the technical partners, including ION, UNHCR, IDMC, the expert group on refugees, IGRIS, and the expert group on migration statistics. This group supporting the member states is a formidable alliance that can really unpack and maybe lead the world in how we actually understand the stocks and flows of this particular vulnerable population. And the Alliance Diverse Network of Actors, which now is close to 50, is a platform unlike many other, united by a common cause. And we can do a lot more to make sure the data needs of the children, each one of us and collectively. So I can proudly say for UNICEF, we are launching the inclusion of a new module on IDPs and refugees in the multiple data cluster 7, in fact, which we're launching it officially later this evening. So more data should become available, but also, as I was talking to some friends here, existing data also should be better analyzed with a better purpose and a better target. We will hear today about the concrete initiatives that IDAC has spearheaded over the last 3 years, including the launch of the Global Pledge that was taken in Santiago, titled Promises to Action Towards Better Data for Children on the Move at the 3rd International Forum on Migration and Statistics. So looking forward, we have a fantastic opportunity for us to take the IDAC's mission to a whole next level. And it also means we have spent the last 2 to 3 years getting ourselves organized, trying to figure out our plans of action, where we want to go, who are the partners, and we have produced some important work. Now it's the time to really accelerate the work. Now that we've got ourselves organized, we are able to see and meet each other more easily. So it's time for action. But I would also like us to think a little bit more about how the global community can remain agile and responsive in its response to crisis, right? So it's not about only setting norms and standards, but how can we also help become a bit more operational, working with the member states, and how well we can best use our expertise and know how to forge concrete solutions that improve the lives of the children on the move. For us in UNICEF, we very quickly move from the data to, okay, what impact did it have? Or how did it really change the lives of the children? So I really look for all your support and our collective action to dream and we realize a better world for children. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Indra. And now we will hear another brief welcome remarks from a co-secretariat member, Ms. Ani Todorova of Eurostat. Ani, over to you.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on the time zone. On behalf of Eurostat, I would like to thank for this opportunity to join again the science event and to complement the opening remarks. We represent a statistical producer and also the European statistical system. And from own experience, I can confirm how important it is to have statistics that can speak for the children, and particularly demographic statistics, migration statistics, and social statistics in general is called upon to delivering this detailed data. You may be aware that after the big migration wave or crisis of 2015-2016, the European Commission has put as a priority to have dedicated policy actions that address children in migration. As a result, we have invested and we have improved tremendously, in particular asylum statistics, in order to enable adequate breakdowns by age and availability of data for minors and particularly unaccompanied minors. And we are almost close to reach the goal of 100% country coverage, meaning that all members of the European statistical system to be able to deliver data with appropriate level of detail, not only on the children, but on the unaccompanied minors. And unfortunately, we know that last year confronted many of us with an extraordinary event, the invasion of Ukraine, which called very quickly for statistical reaction, and particularly for availability of data on children fleeing the war. So thanks to the joint efforts of 18 member states of the European Union and 4 countries from the European Free Trade Association, today we are able to provide quite a lot statistics. In particular, about 10% of all children that were displaced and affected from this conflict had to leave Ukraine, and they arrived at the European Union to seek protection. Also, during the first month of the crisis, the children represented 47% of the displaced person. Later on, their share changed because of the dynamics of the events, and it came down to 26%. But of course, these percentages, their human lives, their destinies and experiences, and especially the children and the unaccompanied minors, they're the most vulnerable. So we continue to work on improving our efforts and improving statistical data available to all users, policy, academia, media, and so on. There are many challenges to ensure that these data are disaggregated. And the work under the auspices of IDAC is giving us a lot of motivation and increasing our enthusiasm, particularly the work on defining appropriate indicators to monitor the situation of the migrant children is extremely important. And we would be very happy to implement policy recommendations and statistical practices that can improve our work. And in conclusion, I can say that many of my colleagues within the European statistical system are sharing this commitment to providing better data on the children. And we would be very happy to inspire other colleagues even from other countries or from other international organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And now, dear colleagues, we will move on to the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Dr. Coco Warner, the new director of the Global Data Institute of Iowa. Coco, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Australia. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here. In Manhattan, just across from UN headquarters. Many of us are gathered here for the 54th meeting of the UN Statistical Commission. So it's great to see those of you here in person, and hello to all of our participants online. My name is Coco Warner, and as I was introduced, I'm the director of the International Organization of Migration's Global Data Institute. It's really great to be here in this community. So maybe we can just set the scene and then go on to a wonderful panel. And thank you, Vidya, for such a really perfect putting us in the context. I'll repeat a couple of things that you've heard already, and that will really get us set up for a very good conversation and just a little bit of look ahead. What you're going to hear is a few presentations, and then we'll widen it out to you here in the room, as well as those of you online, so that we can have a discussion. You'll bring your expertise and insights, and there will be some really interesting questions, I'm sure. So just to set the scene, let's look at some of the numbers. If I could have that first slide. And to put this in perspective, worldwide, the data that we do have suggests that about 280, but less than 300 million people are on the move. These are migrants. And of those, it's estimated that we have about 35.5 million international migrants who are children. But the big challenge is the data. We're not exactly sure. Who are they? Is the magnitude approximately correct? What are their needs? Where are they? And their children. Moving exactly to what Anna had pointed out, in the conflict in the Ukraine, 2 out of 3 minors have been displaced. It's wintertime. If you think of your own children or a youth representative, you can think about what those children might be needing. And you can imagine the work of UNICEF and others. How could we make sure that those children are protected? And even more, how do we make sure we're here in New York City and we're thinking about sustainable development all of the time? How do we make sure that those children have the opportunities to really strive to their full potential? And the data is one of the jumping off points to understand those needs and to make sure that all of our efforts are really concerted and focused to helping children reach their full potential. And of course, avoid exploitation and trafficking and the other dark realities that we have in our world. Just moving along, 1 in 3 of the world's stateless people are children, and 1 in 2, half of the world's children live in 33 countries that are already classified as high risk. We have an enormous challenge. And what could be better than to be amongst all of you who are specialists in statistics and data and analysis to get a sense of what do we need to do moving forward together to help improve the picture and the action that we take together to make sure that children are protected and that they have what they need, again, to reach that full potential. We also have some protective frameworks. You see that over there on the other column of this slide. And it will take us working together with solid evidence base to make sure that these protective frameworks actually are coming to bear. So with that scene setting, maybe we can now move on to 3 panelists. Estrella, we're going to start with you, and you introduced yourself. It's wonderful to have you. And you're going to tell us a little more about the mission. In fact, all 3 of these presentations are going to be addressing the mission of IDAC, which is now at least 3 years old, and an important partnership, and what we're actually doing to improve social and demographic statistics.
Thank you, Coco. So to the next slide, please, Rose, to just again, a reminder that IDAC is now comprised of some 50 members, and we hope that we will be able to attract more member states, particularly, to join the alliance. Really, the mission is to improve the data and statistics on children on the move so that we can promote evidence-based policymaking and programming. So there are 3 strategic action points for the IDAC, and that objective 1 is to highlight collaboration as an essential component of innovative solutions and methods for child-specific data work. So together we can co-create solutions to these enormous challenges that we have been talking about. And the second objective is to strengthen building capacities so that national systems can get stronger. And the third is to focus on the visibility, availability, and usability of data. So making the disparate data and information that we know already exists more available, more coherent, and usable for policymakers and those who make decisions for and on behalf of children. Next slide, please. We know the road to improving data is not easy. Challenges range from political to technical and substantive to systemic and structural. At the broadest level, when children are not prioritized, their needs are likely to be overlooked or neglected. This is why using a child-specific lens is very, very critical. Data producers often operate in silos or face financial hurdles which can be because producing data on children is expensive. And for certain vulnerable subgroups, such as irregular migrant children and stateless children, its data is particularly hard to capture. The limited political will, time, and resources are an issue in many countries, along with the competing political priorities and tensions surrounding migration and displacement. These issues may be acutely felt in low-income countries impacted by conflict and crisis. And so for these reasons, IDAC focuses on pooling resources and leveraging collective expertise in order to generate solutions that lead to concrete and real change. In the next slide, IDAC's unique added value is its convening power as it brings together the key stakeholders at the nexus of migration, displacement, development, data, and child protection. So we focus on sustainable solutions to data challenges in order to better protect children on the move. We aim to provide a platform for key stakeholders to convene and develop solutions together through our working groups. For example, we bring together, share, and disseminate disparate data sources while spotlighting ongoing data gaps. We raise the need to include children's voices and their unique needs at key global and regional forums, and we advocate for better data even during crises and emergencies. As many of you have followed us in the last 3 years, we have organized a number of events at regional and global levels, or participated in some of those. And the event that we're holding here today at the Statistical Commission side event is part of our contribution to this evolving landscape on data for children on the move, and hopefully to contribute to improving statistical systems at large. So in the next slide, I want to just highlight that we have 4 working groups which serve as vehicles for the development of concrete public goods and services that IDAC is focusing on. So we have the privilege of having 2 working group chairs today to talk about the outcomes of their respective work streams, which are relevant to the agenda of the Statistical Commission, which focuses on social statistics. And in addition to that, we are going to hear about 2 outcomes, two briefs outcomes as well of our partnership with the IDAC Secretariat and other members, a brief on terminologies and a brief on data sources. So all the discussion in the Statistical Commission, there's an emphasis on lack of standardization, terminologies. The same terminology may apply or may be understood in different ways across countries. So I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Aina from UNHCR to present those briefs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Estrella. It's a pleasure to be presenting IDAC together with my 2 good colleagues, Danshan and Estrella. I'm Aina Satra. I'm in the Statistics and Demographics section in UNHCR. Before going to the briefs, just wanted to briefly say that for UNHCR, it's important to be part of this alliance. And I think I was in that room, if I'm not mistaken, 3 years ago when the alliance was established. And I think we've accomplished a lot in the 3 years that have passed. But I do agree that it's also time to now really take the work to regional and country level and see how we can improve data on children. UNHCR has been a secretariat member from the very start, and we see real added value in working closely with partners to advocate for increased efforts to improve data on children on the move. UNHCR has been very active in the advocacy around the group, but we've also been involved in, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 of the working groups, working directly on deliverables that can guide data production and collection at country level. So over to the briefs that I'm tasked to talk about. IDAC is currently finalizing 2 briefs that will provide foundational information on children on the move and on statistical methods and systems. The first brief that you see here is called Getting to Know Children on the Move. and that responds to the need to communicate standardized statistical definitions for all children on the move, drawing on already existing statistical frameworks, including the ones that are endorsed by the UN Statistical Commission later today, and also other statistical frameworks that we are familiar with. The same terminology must be used across context in order to generate quality data that can be shared within a country, across regions, and globally. Acting as a reference document for countries, UN and agencies, NGOs, policymakers, researchers, and others, IDAC's new brief promotes a conceptual understanding of the term children on the move and provides a conceptual framework to understand the many groups and situations that the term encompasses. The document builds on existing frameworks, as already mentioned, employing a user-friendly glossary-like structure to unpack key migration and displacement terms that relate to children, while also identifying which groups of children on the move are being counted and which are being left behind, statistically speaking. Next slide, please. This this slide shows just a visual of the document, and I'm not going to go into details as I know we not have much time, but just quickly, the chart here illustrates a conceptual framework for 5 major groups of children included in IDAC's use of the term children on the move in the terminology brief. This gives an overview of the terms we discussed and included in the brief. It is important to note that children may fall into multiple categories or switch between categories illustrated in this visual. In this regard, this visual should not be considered a statistical framework for counting discrete categories of children on the move, but rather is meant to illustrate the multiple, sometimes overlapping categories used to describe children on the move throughout their migration journey. And then we can move to the next slide, please. This is the second brief that the group has worked on over the past couple of months. And it's called Data Sources on Children on the Move. And it takes a behind the scene look at official statistics on international migrants and displaced persons. It's serving as a background document. The brief explores existing and emerging data sources on migrant and displaced children, such as census, surveys, and administrative data that we all are so familiar with, and also maybe less familiar with alternative data sources. It also highlights opportunities to enhance the data and where sound investments can be made to improve quality, reliability, and accuracy. There are also, and very useful, I think, some promising country-level initiatives highlighted in the brief, talking about the importance of collecting data responsibly. And the next slide just gives you a snapshot of some of the visuals for this database. And this mapping exercise was actually started already back in 2021, and it's involved a lot of partners from the IDAC Secretariat, mentioning IDMC in particular because they took a leading role. And it has an overview of 20 existing databases and resource hubs relevant to migrant and displaced children. For sure, there are even more that have not been included here that we all probably are aware of. So if there is available funding for this, this is something that will be prioritized going forward. And it could be an objective for the group to create maybe a central repository or a global hub that brings together these disparate sources per today into one holistic technical hub to have a better and more comprehensive overview of all these relevant data sources that are collecting data on children on the move. So with that quite quick introduction to the 2 briefs, I'll move to the next slide, which talks more about going forward and how we see the collaboration with different partners. As mentioned earlier, we've been very much focused at the global level, but we know it's time to also look more at regional level and link up with regional processes. And I'm glad to see Anne here, and I think she will talk to some of her work in this area. So looking ahead, IDAC will continue to focus on strategic opportunities across levels and sectors to ensure that children on the move have a voice at the table, also including those communities that we work with and for. By linking our work to relevant regional and global processes, and you see some of them mentioned in this slide, maybe to highlight the African Union Agenda for 2063 and also the European Child Guarantee, the work of the regional economic commissions and also key forums concerning SDGs, data and statistics, and migration and displacement more in general. We will further drive efforts to close the data gaps on migrants and displaced children. In all these contexts, the rights of children on the move must be prioritized and action must be taken to improve their lives. So I hope I didn't speak too fast and that my voice didn't break. I have a little cold, but with this, handing over to Danshan. Danshan, over to you.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everyone. I'm Danshan Yu, Chief of Demographics and Senior Advisor, Statistical and Monitoring at UNICEF headquarters in New York. Sorry, I'm not able to join in person today. I will talk more about the Global Pledge, providing more details. Lydia already mentioned it. So we know that IDAC's success depends on the collective efforts of its members and their commitment to making the necessary investments in statistical systems. We also know that what needs to be done, and as a cross-sectoral platform, we have the know-how and expertise to do it. It's just a matter of working together to concretize our vision. And building on the call to action that the IDAC 5 secretariat members issued 5 years ago and led to the formation of the Alliance. Together with our newest partner, the Migration, Youth and Children platform of the United Nations Major Group on Children and Youth, IDAC has launched a global pledge for better data on migrant and displaced children in January this year. It called for every statistical system to aim to disaggregate data by age, sex, and migratory status, collect data on key issues related to children on the move, make better use of existing data and share it, coordinate data collection efforts within countries and across borders, and to make special efforts to collect and analyze data on children. Next slide. The Global Pledge sets forth specific activities and solutions that member states can commit to. IDAC encourages all member states and partners to take part in these efforts and commit to sustainable change to fill data gaps. We have a web page for people and organizations to sign up the Global Pledge. We will share it later. We will reach out to you and engage, countries and partners collectively to make changes. There has never been a more important time to improve the data and evidence on migrant and displaced children. We hope that today's event and the IDAC initiatives to come will move this important conversation forward and lead to better data and statistics for children on the move. It is our collective responsibility to improve the data availability and the quality that can effectively help address the material and protection needs of the highly vulnerable children on the move. They can wait no longer. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Estrella and Aina and Danshan. That was really great information about IDAC and all of the resources that are both available, as well as some of the gaps that we have to work together in the future. Really appreciate that, some scene-setting information. Let's turn now to our next panelist, and it's my pleasure to introduce you, Apostolos. You're at the President's Office at ELSTAT, which is the Hellenic statisticians. Yes.
Statistical Authority.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes to find it, thinking. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your experience in Greece with these types of statistics.
Thank you very much, Coco. My name is Apostolos Kasapis. I'm the director in the President's Office of the Hellenic Statistical Authority, the Statistics Office of Greece. And I'm here to talk to you regarding our work in the IDAC, in this alliance, in the working group 1, regarding child-specific statistics and capacity strengthening on children on the move. Thank you all for being here. I know it's a tough time. The revealed preference says that since you're here means that the disaggregation regarding children is a very important topic to the statisticians. And thanks to all who are participating in this event through WebEx. Next slide, please. Interesting. So, as I was saying, I'm leading the working group 1. We know everything about regarding IDAC. So, next slide, please. Our working group has to do regarding child-specific data capacity strengthening on children on the move. Next slide, please. Where Hellenic Statistical Authority is the chair. We have many members, and our goal is to strengthen the national statistical system to collect, analyze, store all the data that are needed regarding to be able to have to preserve their children's rights reviewed through the data. Next slide, please. First of all, some stylized facts. There is a lack of data disaggregation regarding children, and this is globally. This is observed both in low and in high-income countries, and even in countries where they have data regarding children and baby children on the move. These data are fragmented. They do not cover all the necessary fields of their activity regarding, for example, health, education, living condition, and access to services and welfare. Next slide, please. That's why we tend and decided in the working group 1 of the IDAC to produce a specific manual regarding the capacity strengthening on children on the move. And this manual is not only for international organizations and stakeholders, but this manual mainly is for the national statistical offices, because at the end of the day, national statistical offices have to provide the data to everybody, to the international organizations and to all the stakeholders. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, we don't have so much time, so perhaps we'll have to skip some slides. Next slide, please. Thank you. And let's say regarding the context and why a key parameter for developing successful policy strategies, the existence of reliable data and official statistics. And you'll see in this manual that we stick to the term official statistics. Why? Because policymakers cannot challenge official data as easily as they usually do in data from other providers or organizations. That's the more important and crucial part. Governments tend to rely on official statistics only. They tend to challenge other forms, other resources of data. That's why it's very important for the national statistical offices and the national statistical systems to be able to have the ability and provide reliable data regarding children, and especially regarding the sensitive issue of children in the move. Official statistics are also submitted to international organizations. That's also very crucial because countries tend to rely on this, on the suggestions from international organizations, and these suggestions rely on the data. Next slide, please. So the existence of disaggregated data highlights an obvious trends, makes vulnerable groups more visible, and helps policymakers, stakeholders to evaluate the measures taken by the state. Next slide, please. So that's an overview of our manual, which is printed right now. I would also like to ask you for your input, because we have many country experiences in this manual, and by far we are very Eurocentric. Thank God in Chile we managed to fish some more countries around the globe. But please, if you have anything to say and your experience, you consider that it's valuable, please don't hesitate to contact me, and we can include in our manual your experience. Believe me, I'm keep saying that we don't need something very extraordinary. When you hear about big data, AI and things like that, okay, that's okay, but not the point. We need your experience. You had to face a specific example of paradigm, and how did you manage to acquire the data? That's all that we need. That's how we are going to build the capacity to provide data to children. Next slide, please. Of course, we have the international guidance. We're talking about data integration. That's part of the manual. So next slide, please. So let's go to the proposals. Next slide. And I'm sticking to the statistical literacy part, not only during the international statistics, not only to the national statistical system, but to the whole country. The statistical literacy term means that people are able and understand why it's important to have data and how these data should be. And we're not just gathering data. We want this data to be reliable. We want this data to have something to say. And that's why all the statistical literacy and statistical systems have the experience to do that. Next slide, please. So the proposals. First of all, national statistical systems should work closely with relevant organizations, institutions such as government agencies, international organizations, civil society groups to identify and collect data on children on the move. Next slide. So the second proposal, national statistical systems should invest in the development of robust data collection and management systems that are designed to capture information on children on the move. This may include the use of specialized data collection tools and techniques, such as surveys and other forms of data collection in the field. Next slide, please. National statistical systems should invest in the development of capacity to analyze and disseminate data on children on the move, including the use of the appropriate methodologies and data visualization tools. Next slide, please. And of course, national statistical systems should invest in the training and capacity building on staff in order to ensure that they have the necessary skills and knowledge to effectively collect, analyze, and disseminate data on children on the move. Next slide. Finally, national statistical systems should secure adequate funding and resources to support data collection, analysis, and dissemination activities related to children on the move. We're not talking only about financial help, but when we're talking about the adequate resources, we're saying also about the human resources. That's the most crucial part. Many countries have the financial resources, but don't have the human capital resources in order to do that work. That's why we're sticking to the statistical literacy part. So the next slide, please. So soon we are going to present this manual in person. So perhaps we'll invite you in Greece, in Athens, to have this presentation. So that would be a very good idea. Thank you very much.
This was fantastic. Thank you so much, both as you're wearing your hat as director of Hellenic Statistics, as well as the working group. We really appreciate all of your efforts there and your leadership. I'm sure I know for me, I had, I think, 5 or 6 questions that came up from that really good presentation. So that we move along, probably many of us have similar questions. Maybe we could move on to Diego and group all of our panelists together, and then we can have that interactive discussion. For those of you who know Diego, he's going to present some of the IDAC guidelines. Diego is the Chief Director of Demography and Population at Statistics South Africa. So again, we're really taking advantage of the amazing network here around the 54th UN Statistical Commission and all of your amazing national capacities. Diego, I think you might be joining us online.
Morning, Coco. I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Super.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you in New York, and as well as those joining online from around the world. I'd like to share with you today some progress that has been made on the guidelines on child-specific indicators, which is a piece of work that Working Group 2 has been working on, which I have the pleasure to lead. Next slide, please. So the objectives of Working Group 2 have really to identify and to develop the indicators and the metadata which are related to children on the move. It's done so by linking these indicators to the 2030 SDG, to the two global compacts, as well as other child-related frameworks. Furthermore, we're also working in partnership with entities like the Expert Group on Migration Statistics, which I'm also a member of, with EGRIS and with other relevant fora. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we approach this task, I think the first thing that we did was a mapping exercise on the experiences of various countries. And this was to capture the information of countries' experiences on how do they measure children on the move. Some key results out of that were that there is a huge gap in terms of numbers and key indicators for children on the move. There's an imbalance between regions in terms of what data is being made available. There is a low disaggregation by migratory status across all themes, almost no data coverage for irregular migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, and only 1 in 3 countries reported having data on unaccompanied children. And so the countries that you see listed on the right, along with the organizations, are the countries who participated in this mapping exercise. Next slide, please. So the guidelines for this indicator document is that we want to identify disaggregation dimensions. There are 9 stock and flow statistics, which we call the core indicators. There are 10 priority indicators that are spread across health, education, child protection, and poverty. And then there are 17 additional indicators that are spread across those themes as well. In addition to this, we also want to highlight some best practices and experiences that some countries have already been implementing. And as part of the call to action, we want to also invite other countries to share with us their best practices and experiences. Next slide, please. So I've indicated these thematic areas. I think suffice to say that these thematic areas are aligned to the SDGs, to the 2 global compacts, to the international recommendations on refugee statistics, the recommendations on internally displaced statistics. We are keenly awaiting the outcome at the Statistics Commission this week on the recommendations for stateless statistics, but also with we have taken the OECD's integration indicators into account. Next slide, please. So before I start going through some of the indicators, I think having had the chance to listen in on some of the discussions of the Statistics Commission earlier this week, and in particular the agenda item on social statistics, where the issue of indicators on international migration statistics was being discussed. I think it's really important to stress that these indicators are aspirational in nature. We acknowledge that there may be many countries who are not able to collect all of the indicators that we will show, but this is something that I think we need to aspire to if we are to measure and respond to children on the move effectively. So on the issue of stocks, I think we acknowledge that stocks and flows are really the key building blocks of migration data. And here we're talking about international migrant children, children with a refugee background, internally displaced ones, stateless children, asylum-seeking children, and all of these who are part of the stocks. In terms of flows, these will be international migrant children, forcibly displaced children, and accompanied and separated children, mostly on an annual basis here. Next slide, please. When we come to the priority indicators, under health, we are proposing collection of indicators that deal with undernourishment, adolescent birth rate, and the essential health services. Under education, we're looking at reading and mathematical proficiency, the educational completion rate, as well as youth that are NEET, those are not in employment, education, and training. Under child protection, we're looking at birth registration and the sustainable solution towards child protection. And finally, under poverty, we are looking at the proportion of children under the international poverty line, as well as those under any national poverty lines that may exist across member states. Next slide, please. Then looking at the additional indicators, these additional indicators are indicators that we think are important, but we acknowledge that there may be difficulty in collecting them, but we are still recommending that they be collected wherever possible. So under health, these would be issues of malnutrition, skilled birth attendance, an under 5 mortality rate, suicide, vaccination coverage. When we look at education, it would look at those children who are developmentally on track, as well as an out-of-school rate. Under child protection, a wide variety of indicators there: underage marriage, child labor, discrimination, physical punishment, human trafficking, violence, mental health access, as well as detention. And then under poverty, social protection coverage. Next slide, please. So I'd like to highlight here 2 country experiences that have been shared with us. The first one from Italy. This was a survey that is focused on children on the move. 2014 and 2015 integration surveys were held, and a 2021 survey on behavior and attitudes and future projects. I think this was a very innovative study that looked at the representative or the representation in schools of foreign students amongst Italian students. Alongside this one from Serbia was a collaborative product for the benefit of children on the move. This was a collaboration between the Statistics Office, the Ministry of the Interior, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and of Education, along with the IOM and UNHCR, looking at the benefits that measuring children on the move has had in Serbia. Next slide, please. So what is next for Working Group 2? I think right now, integration of its work into the 2 expert groups, the one on international migration statistics and an EGRIS, is very much on the horizon. The expert group on international migration statistics is looking at issues of data sources, data integration, and integrating these into the realm of children on the move is really important. I've alluded to EGRIS presenting this week at the Commission on the stateless statistics, and of course integrating that with child statistics. Child migration statistics is really important. And then finally, we are all keenly anticipating the identification of indicators that will be used to review the Global Compact under paragraph 70 of the IMRF, which took place in May of last year. Next slide, please. So I just want to thank everybody involved in IDAC for coordinating all of these efforts and for bringing together the work that Working Group 2 has put so far. This is certainly just a milestone. With still plenty of work to be done as we move forward. Thank you, Coco. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was really interesting. Done a terrible job moderating, and we're completely off time in terms of where we are. I promise that we'll have a chance to discuss afterwards. So for those of you who have time, we have 3 more contributions, and it's already 9:15. The time is just flown. It's been amazing and really interesting. For those of you who can, perhaps I'd invite you to stay in this beautiful space that UNICEF has provided for us to exchange maybe personally with the speakers if they have time. Let's move on to our youth representative. We're joined by Alankrita Dayal, who is with the Migration Youth and Children Platform. Alankrita, we're excited to hear from you. And then just as a preview of our final 2 contributors, we have Anne Singleton online. And then rounding up our comments for today, we have João Pedro Azevedo, who's the Chief Statistician of UNICEF. We're so glad you've been able to join us. I know it's been a really busy week for you.
First off, thank you so much for hosting this important dialogue, and thank you to all of you, staying here and really allowing the youth to share their perspective in this dialogue as well. My name is Alankrita Dayal, and I'm the North America focal point for the Migration Youth and Children Platform, which is the migration working group for the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. On a daily basis, I work with youth from all around the globe. We serve 75 countries, and we have a network of youth that span over 150,000 individuals. And so as I work with youth and as I, learn their stories and as I work on different initiatives, I also leverage research and data to advocate for our social issues that's affecting children on the move, including social and economic integration, human rights, and protection. And so today I'd like to share some of the insights and best practices that I have found to be most useful when collecting data on children and youth, as well as highlight some of our most pressing needs as youth. So with my team at NYCP, we survey youth and youth representatives from every region of the world to find out how can we ensure that data and statistics on migration are relevant and representative. So I'd like to start by sharing a quote from one of our youth respondents. He was a youth from Nigeria, and he said, having information on the existence of each of the children, their history or details of their movement, and their particular needs and vulnerabilities is very important when it comes to data collection and analysis. And with that context in mind, all of us here today can really take action to ensure that the voice of those who are most vulnerable in our communities is reflected in our work. And we can do so by promoting standardized terminology to make collaboration and data comparisons across regions more achievable, by collecting data that's aggregated by age and other factors to best pick out different trends and patterns, and by supporting initiatives that address barriers such as language barriers. Additionally, in our technology-driven world, when we're thinking about inclusivity within our communities and designing policies and programs that provide accurate and timely information at all stages of migration, it's really important to consider creative uses of trending technologies and also cell phone apps to engage migrant youth population. So for example, nearly 83% of youth all around the world have access to a smartphone by the time they turn 11. So with that in mind, how can we connect with youth at a more scalable level and make sure that the digital surveys that we're creating, for example, are targeted to youth from every single region, youth from every single language, and so on and so forth. So another thing I'll bring up is how can we also stay up to date with the latest trends and apps that are in the mind of our youth? So an example is one of the latest social media applications that youth are on nowadays is an app called Be Real, where folks are sharing what they do in real time at the moment from all around the world. So how can we tap into these kinds of apps and pick up on these latest trends so that we're always engaged with youth in the latest medium and mode that's out here at the present times? And so with the rising use of these smartphones as well, when we collect data through a digital basis, we can also start building a network of large data sets, which in turn can help us make more fact-based and data-driven policies. And, in turn, that will lead us to more sustainable solutions. So related to that, are we, collecting data in a way that's also accessible to, visually impaired individuals and cognitively impaired individuals is another thing to think about, especially with, pandemics and other crises on the rise. How can we make sure as we're digitizing the ways that we collect surveys, that we're also keeping in mind web accessibility protocols? Are we, writing within our code different tags that a screen reader can also read so that surveys can be accessible to people who are visually impaired and can't see them digitally, but they do have a screen reader that can read out loud the survey, because within the code, you have made these tags, which that reader can then read out to the participant. So how can we make these kinds of accessibility mechanisms woven into the way that we collect data so that no one is left behind, and so that we're really looking at accurate information when we're designing policies and programs? And going back to our survey results, 52% of our participants cited equal access to education and lack of economic opportunities as the leading challenge that they're facing at the moment. So an example of approaching that kind of challenge is conducting a root cause analysis so that the solution that comes out for this challenge is based off of the root cause. So for example, one question that I would ask is, why is that the case? Is it the case that maybe youth are not having access to transportation to reach schools? Is it the case that schools do not have standards in place to teach important life skills such as financial literacy or technology? Is it the case that there's other resource availability issues or language barriers? So depending on the root cause of this challenge of lack of education, we can create a solution that's actually going to affect and remove that metric and reduce the amount of youth who are facing this challenge. So for example, if it's the case that we find out that schools are not teaching life skills such as financial literacy, we might want to go and approach governments and advocate that within curriculum standards, we should have these in place as well. If it's the case that there's transportation issues, we might want to advocate with cities and governors to see, can more school buses be created, things of that sort, to really identify what's the root cause and create a pinpointed solution that way. And then the final thing I'll say is, as we're digitizing all of these processes, a great benefit of this is also handling crises at scale, especially when there's wars or disasters, climate change, and all of that sort. So building infrastructure from the ground up to automate our different workflows. For example, we can leverage technology to streamline communications between teammates and entities that we work with, right? Let's say we have a solution in mind. We can automatically, we can leverage technology to automatically send a push notification to 1, the social media team, 2, the folks who are on the ground who will be implementing, 3, any other support systems, right? So how can we use technology to really cut down on costs and time that it takes to implement a solution, and also streamline our communications that way? So with that, I'd just like to close by saying that 100% of the youth that we survey find it necessary that children and youth are engaged in the process right from the beginning when it comes to leveraging data to inform our policy making. And the way that this would work is, even when it's even at the point of data analysis and collection, engaging youth there, as well as all the way to the final step of when, you know, results are being shared and solutions are being discussed for the youth. And so a key final takeaway I'd like to say is that as youth, we believe that a lot of this can be made possible through the global pledge initiatives of the IDAC, who we worked alongside with and collaborated with to launch. And so it's a pledge to invest in data to protect and secure the future of children on the move. And we as youth are really appreciative of this initiative, and we invite everyone to take part in signing on and, you know, being part of this movement. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I feel like you embody the wonderful opportunities, the realities that many youth that have mobile phones, for example, or smartphones, are living with, as well as uncomfortably some of the challenges. And I would love to hear, probably after the 9:30 mark, to hear that kind of exchange. Really appreciate that injection of reality, as well as kind of as a youth pulling us into the future. Really appreciate that. We're now headed into our last two quick contributions. And again, apologies for my terrible time management. I've just been too kind of taken up in your wonderful comments. And we're going to go to you online. Many of you know the work of Anne. She's at the University of Bristol. And Anne, I'm wondering if you can tell us about how can we get leverage from existing frameworks, maybe at the regional level. Thank you so much, Anne. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to be very brief and just say thanks to everyone for the meeting and very interesting contributions so far. I just want to summarize what I was going to say in a bit of a longer piece, but to say really what the benefit of having the IDAC approach is that you have a global framework and it can act as also as a catalyst to bring people together, and to this convening power is very important. But also all the data sources are all at national level, but we shouldn't forget between the global level and the national level are the regional frameworks. And I wanted to flag up the potential of a regional approach. When we think about the fact that most migration occurs within regions, and most migration and mobility of children as well will be happening within regions for whatever reason, the potential of a regional approach where you have a framework for cooperation, collaboration between national entities means that you can start to think about collecting data on human mobility, however it's defined, across policy areas and across national boundaries. And we have a couple of examples I'd just like to flag up. One, of course, is the European Union, where there is a very clear framework for the collection of migration and asylum data. We heard something about that earlier, but also I wanted to indicate that the ECOWAS guidelines that we prepared with IOM, ILO, ICMPD, and the EU and the ECOWAS region, that ECOWAS guidelines for the harmonization of migration data management, not simply harmonize the attempt to harmonize data categories, data collection, but to harmonize the way in which migration and mobility measurement is approached. And that can, if you can harmonize that approach, it means that there can be quite effective knowledge exchange across national borders and across a region. And this allows for the analysis of mobility in its social and economic context within a regional economic community. This is of the 8 regional RECs in the African Union, that Africa has the potential there to stimulate this kind of approach at regional levels, and to understand that mobility that doesn't always fit nicely into a category of international migration. So I just wanted to flag that up. I won't take any more time, but I'm happy to talk later in the session if there's more conversation about this. Not to forget the regions. That's my appeal. I think IDAC could propose, from all the recommendations that IDAC is producing, could propose addendums to existing frameworks for the EU, for example, or for ECOWAS, or for forthcoming development of regional approaches, and could greatly strengthen the way in which data on children and mobility of children could be improved. So I hope that's helpful and concise enough, and I would have more to say if there's more time. Thank you.
Wonderfully so. Thank you, Anne. We really appreciate it. Exactly, the concise, I just regret so much time is flying. But one of the things I just do want to pull out, because we want to bring data and statistics to action, this regional approach is very intriguing, and be able to put things in that context and bring that then to those authorities who are endowed with the responsibility to take action seems really important. So thanks, Anne, for your insights and recommendations, and hopefully IDAC, you can lead the way in our partnership and help us continually work on these great recommendations. João Pedro, I wonder if you could help round off this discussion today about children on the move and statistics and the database.
Thank you very much, and good morning. And I'd like to start by that's a very tall request. So, but I'll try my best. But I'd like to start by thanking everybody for being here at this early in the morning. And that's a testimony of the importance of this topic to all of us. This is a very important milestone for us. This is the third year of the Secretariat, and it's critical to show the progress that we have achieved to this point, but also to discuss the road ahead. We are very honored and feel very privileged at UNICEF to be a co-host of the Secretariat, to go together with our partner agencies, IOM, UNCHR, OECD, and Eurostat. This work would not have been possible without this collaboration. But more importantly, the 55 member states that are part of this coalition, right? And I would like to especially thank the people from the Greece Statistical Agency and the youth representative as well for being with us on this very important agenda. I think definitely this coalition needs to be broadened, and I think we stand ready for that and very open to that. What I think is particularly important about the IDAC initiative is this pillar based on three areas, right? Standards, data production, but also data use, right? I think that the idea and what was just discussed, that we are building on what exists, is extremely important, right? We do not need a proliferation of standards, but what we need is really build on what exists and use regional platforms, as was discussed, but also the SDG norms that have also been agreed by several member states to actually facilitate the process of collecting this data, but also reporting this data. Of course, the challenge in the data production in this space are also clearly shown to be enormous, and much work still needs to be done. But we should not ever lose sight of the data use, especially its operational relevance, right? It's not just about the advocacy part, which is critical, but we also need to lend a lot of these guidances into country context in order to make it relevant for the operational work that it's needed. That's how member states will feel the value of this work. And I think that is one of the I think, big challenges for the Secretariat in the years to come. I think we need to, I would like to close by thanking the contributions provided by the European Commission, UNCHR, and IOM, which have been the lifeline for us in these last 2 years. I think, as we know, resources for data are not the easiest, especially given all the competing demands and crises that we face. But at the same time, paradoxically, we need the information in order to better respond to this crisis. So we need to work together to be as efficient as we can. And I would like to invite any of you that still have some time to join us, still have some breakfast left, and maybe we can continue the conversation in the next room. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Pedro, for pointing the way and what we have to do together, and what better way to do that than through partnership. But there's a lot of work ahead. We hope that you, as national statistical offices and regional authorities, for those of you who are experts from UN agencies, our universities, our youth, I hope you can share as we're discussing now that our event is closing, what are the challenges? What are the opportunities, and how can we continue to work together through IDAC, as well as in our day jobs, to improve statistics about children on the move, and then take action. Thank you so much.